There we are. Lovely.
Well, that's
Brilliant.
about
Okay.
right, isn't it?
Right. We're ready to go. Everything's ready.
Oh,
Welcome.
okay. Well, this is a um, well, I chose this title because it fits in with all the work that Peter and I have been doing over the years. And I think he made a fantastic breakthrough when he discovered this nilpotent rewrite system, and in particular, the Hamiltonian associated with it. Now, just to give you an idea, since it seems to have been a little bit confused when we've been talking, I thought I should tell you that it's not what can be thought with the mind, but rather that whereby each autonomous, conscious, sentient human mind can think. And this is very like the thing in the Upanishad, which says, know that alone to be Brahmin, the spirit, and not what the people here adore. I thought that was rather appropriate, considering the nature of the discussion. So I'll give an example, e.g. magnetic resonance imaging, which is an actual quantum mechanical machine as externally designed and controlled by the conscious human mind, embodied in Huygens matter categorical wave principle, by which the human brain, mind, and neurons work, as experimentally validated, in terms of their actual signal architecture and physiology, which comes out of the theory. And it's close to Wolfgang's article, because this approach is one which involves a parameterization of frequency and phase, which is effectively a clock, or a set of clocks, or reference frames that concerns. Now, can I go I want to go oh gosh. Now I've got this on this, I'll put this the other side.
Okay, you want to go, there's a little right arrow there, isn't there? When you move over there,
yes,
it is.
yes. So, well, this is just a slide from a previous thing, which you ignore the thing at the top. So, and essentially holographic technology is the DVD or a PC disc, where frequency modulated signals of dynamic images, sound, or alphabetic language are written and read by laser on a single spiral reference beam on the disk. And as is the case for DNA and RNA, where the chemically coded information is a dynamic blueprint of the life form. For both NQM quantum physics and the genetic code exhibit the same group of symmetries and symmetry breaking. So here is perhaps something you might not be aware of, that Heisenberg uncertainty is the actual means of 3D quantum computation in this holographic system. This diagram shows the quantum signal decay losing amplitude on the z-axis, but simultaneously regaining it longitudinally as phase in the XY plane, so that the MRA brain slice image, if that's what you're want to look at, selected for measurement by a prepared electromagnetic pulse train that is going to be applied in order to thermodynamically transform into a wave pattern, which is a diffraction pattern of the brain slice. So this gives you a picture of the machine, and by the side of it, the MRI diffraction patterns, and you see that if you take the whole diffraction pattern in the top one that's the picture you get. But if you only take the middle of the diffraction pattern, the little bit that shows up there, then you still get the whole brain slice. Not just a bit, not things. And if you cut out the middle of the pattern, again, you still get. So this pattern is holographic in nature. And this is this is what comes out of the MRI machine if you look at the brain of a particular person. It actually shows the nerve, in this particular case, the nerve fibers across the corpus callosum, and how they link together. So it shows the fibers. It doesn't show the signals that are going along the fibers. It shows the fibers themselves. And these NQM encodings are geometric. They concern phase and quantum holograms and trace transforms. And I've deliberately put the trace transforms in as if they were bracket brackets. Now the waves in and out of the phase control essentially are phase gates rather than the familiar bit gates. These concern geometric operators, hologram transforms H10, which are one inside the particular geometry and not outside, or vice versa, such that the four wave mixing for the frequencies V and V primed, the quantum wavelet of the quantum wavelet functions, is defined by this expression here. And this, the thing is a tensor multiplication. And there exist trace transforms of each of the waves with themselves. And the implication of the holographic transforms with themselves is that each of the waves differs from its companion, which has by a constant phase factor, as in standard quantum mechanics, where only phase differences can be measured. So you can't measure absolute phases. And these C's define a hierarchy of fixed reference beams that the quantum holograms require, because holograms record the image, don't record the image carrying beam itself by means of a suitable reference beam. Now here is a picture of my grandson before he was born, and this is using a similar process to the one I've described, except in this particular case, we're using sound waves. And normally when you see this, as many of you will probably have done, if you've had the privilege of being with your wife when just before the baby is born or at some previous appointment, you see the image of the baby moving dynamically. So it's about, this theory is about dynamic wave control of any kind of wave. And we see that in this particular kind of control, that effectively the Hamiltonian is maintained. It's not losing, you're not effectively losing any information. So, and the theory says that, explains how any type of wave signal propagating in a medium can change any form of a particular behavior, OP, in order to control a machine, or inversely, how such a machine may be controlled in order to compute any particular form of physical behavior, as here, and how this may be achieved utilizing entropy production, acting now as effectively an information metric. So that after focusing on, say, a gallstone, for example, you could turn up when you've focused the waves on the gallstone, then you can turn up the returning sound waves to a much higher power and actually break up the sound waves, break up the gallstone. Now, this is what Sir John Eccles discovered when he got the Nobel Prize, or part of his discovery about the nature of the synapse in every nerve cell, which is truly remarkable. And even more remarkable in some ways is the fact that Schwemp actually confirms that the theory explains why all these things should happen in the way they do happen. That is to say, the synaptic bulb really does have a hexagonal vesicular grid where each vesicle contains 10 to the 4th molecules of neurotransmitter, and they may be different. There may be different neurotransmitter molecules, and they are released probabilistically to provide the synaptic gain across the synaptic cleft after the neuron is fired. So they don't always go across the synaptic cleft. They just release probabilistically. Now that to me is just utterly remarkable, and even more remarkable when you think of we've all got these neurons and how many people in the world, and they're all like that, and they're creating an enormous amount of activity worldwide. So I just find that possibility just mind-boggling. And now you might say, well, how does the information get into the body through the senses? And this explains how, for example, you can demonstrate that a three-dimensional object image bearing light beam in air can be produced from one in water, and it's because the surface of the water acts as a hologram. Now, there's a well-known, recognized form of the holographic transform, and it's the famous quantum mechanical Dirac delta function. And I give the the formula there that details a particular function. You'll notice that around certain things, particularly in the geometry, we're talking about a modulus. And I think that has something to do with the Mobius function. And c is the speed of light or sound, or read the transmission of the nerve cells within the brain, and it's all called the Green's function. So the next, oh well, that's just something from an offside, isn't it? Now here is using the kind of things. This happens on all sorts of this kind of wave properties up, and this is just some example of you can see the man's hand, and if you increase the magnification tenfold, you can see the back of the skin of the hand, and then you can see where with the folded skin, and you keep on going down until you get to the size of a cell, and then a hole within the cell, and then inside you can actually see the DNA molecules. And these are actual processes that can be done with different kinds of machines, like MRI. In fact, this last one working, there's a machine at the Crick Institute in London in which you can put just a drop of liquid into the machine, and you can actually see inside a living cell the DNA at work. So it's really quite, this technology is really quite amazing. And it's getting better all the time, because originally it originated from someone getting an idea that if you put a coil around the human body and he switched on an electric current through it, he discovered that in fact the current changed phase, and basically that's the Aronoff Bohm effect. And since then, that very, very crude experiment, which demonstrated this possibility, which nobody thought would be possible, that's how it happens, and it's a definite quantum mechanical process. Now, this is another thing. This is this remarkable thing reported in Nature, that in the heavens they found an unusual helix near the center of the Milky Way, and this one stretches 80 light years, and it looks like an image of DNA or of DNA, and it's formed, I think, because it's very close to the magnetic field that's emanating probably from possibly the black hole at the center of the galaxy. And here is what, when they looked at the center of the galaxy, they found, it came up the other day, that they discovered that there were stars circulating around the black hole, and that the black hole was effectively at the foci, as one of the foci of all these ellipses. And there's a little bit from that I took from Peter about how this thing can be helped and become possible. Now here is how in this system things become sentient. So if you have a source of a wave and you send it into what's called an active mirror, and the active mirror is pumped by two lasers in opposition to one another, then you can send the wave back to it, directly back to its source. So effectively, that's what's happening in all our sensors, but in the opposite direction in some senses. And some of these waves, I have to say, because it's quantum mechanics, are virtual, so they're not actually waves that go that way, but they point that way. So this mechanism can be conceived as a perfectly focused lens, say, as used to acoustically remove gallstones, or for the purpose of Star Wars technology. You get your radar to detect the missile or plane that is approaching you in the sky, and when you've detected it, then you pump up the wave that's going back to it, and with so much energy that it destroys the missile. And this I think is what is happening actually in the CERN LHC. You've got effectively two opposing lasers that are the two proton beams, and their source or secondary source is a spectrum which selects in particular the Higgs boson, the clocks, or the gluon structures according to their nilpotent Dirac symmetry breaking. And from the spectrum of these, it's able to pick out the one that was discovered at CERN, the Higgs boson. And this one is just about the Crick microscope that I told you about. So the four-wave mixing of the phase conjugate adaptive resonance specifies an associative read-write memory and filter bank, resulting in a self-organized, autonomous, hierarchical spectrum of labeled holograms as the pages of an associate read-write filter bank with little and no crosstalks between the pages, which is the most efficient in nature, and where the labeled names of objects in one hemisphere and of holograms of objects in the other permits the semantic use of natural languages and mathematical analysis and of Peter's language, rewrite language itself. And so it turns out this is what this is the kind of thing that would actually be predicted using that. So the things from the eyes actually get split in two, and they go this way, and you get the holograms on one side, and the names of effectively the names of the objects on the other side in this particular way, and they're joined one to one. So the images are uniquely identified as Wittgenstein's semantic postulate proposed. Not where are we? Okay. And now the second law of thermodynamics has actually changed, because quantum coherence, phase theta, fundamentally alters the ideal Carnot engine heat efficiency from a source, and the difference from one determined by the source and the sink to which is the classical second law, to a law that depends on the phase, and where the source and the sink are actually at the same temperature. So there's only one temperature. And I believe that this applies fundamentally to ourselves. This is why we are only actually coherent within a certain temperature range, and therefore conscious and functioning at that range, and that if we go out of that range, then we lose our coherence and functional capabilities. Yeah. Sorry, seem to have lost the. Yeah. I'm going back now.
Peter, you might need to go back to your folder and just see if you can see the next slide in there, because it seems to have got to the end of the thing.
I think it's at the. It could be at the end. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it thinks you are, but I think if you
Yes, it could be.
you go back,
I'll go through the escape. Oh, the escape work. No.
Oh.
Not sure how to. Usually it just goes back. That's strange. Yeah. I think that must be the last slide in that. Yes, that is the last slide. Maybe. So I now want to. I have to go and find another file. Excuse me. No, that's not one. Now, where was the other file? Must be in your case. Excuse me. Yeah. Now, I just go back to sharing the screen, do I?
You're sharing the screen. It's fine. We can see it.
You can see it. Okay. You can still see it, can you?
Yes, we can see it. We can see the sun only shines because of quantum physics.
Oh, okay, okay. So this was a headline a little while ago in Apple News under Forms Innovation. And it made very clear that all the stars in the cosmos, and therefore our sun, would be inert were it not for the fact that all matter, energy, mass, and momentum behaves quantum physically as predicted in terms of Peter's Hamiltonian. He didn't actually mention Peter's work, of course, as reported in his book. And Forbes showed that this releases energy, the energy necessary for the nuclear fusion of the hydrogen protons into helium. And in the case of our particular sun, determines the rate at which this fusion reaction happens. So It happens very slowly, uh, but you do need to have matter as waves in order for that to take place. If that wasn't possible, then the sun wouldn't shine. So it says on both this was, and this is probably true too, also critical for the 3D molecular autonomous evolution of sentient life in accordance with the genetic code as a quantum hologram wave encoding, as Peter and I published in How Our Intelligence Evolved. And where in another article as recently published, there was ambient temperature, as I said, using this new version of the thermodynamic law, quantum physics, so that quantum physical photosynthetic harvesting of photons with respect to marine algae by chlorophyll allowed us to postulate that it's ubiquitous to all plant and animal life too. For if the magnesium atom in chlorophyll is replaced by an iron atom, the result is a biomolecule very like the hemoglobin that harvests our oxygen. And so, although science can't yet devise such apparently universal quantum construction signal architectures of any significant general complexity in the laboratory, nature does so all the time on Earth in relation to DNA, RNA, biomolecular signal architectures of all living systems, subsystems, etc. And is such that the formalization of all matter wave behavior as defined and predicated here, unlike digital signal computation, is potentially capable of solving natural problems of exponential complexity in real time so as to incrementally advance the evolution in real 3D space-time scales. No. And these conclusions are in agreement with the peer-reviewed paper, The Brain as a Huygens Machine, as a consequence of the categorical, mathematically formalized description of the physical world postulated on the basis of Huygens' Gedanken experiment for the propagation of matter wave field by the recursive formulation of further wavefronts of secondary sources. It says that the perturbation of the field that passes through a 3D surface S containing a wave source is identical to the perturbation obtained by removing the source and substituting it by an appropriate system of secondary sources, as I'm going to show you in diagram 1. Now, I think this particular formulation is syllogistic, and we had a talk about syllogisms, if I remember correctly. So it defines the Lie algebraic diffeomorphic prolongations extensions of these matter wave properties as set in out in these papers and on scales illustrated in the Scientific American book, The Powers of 10, which is about the actual imaged relative size of things in our universe, from the very largest to the very greatest. It's well quite a long, it's a long book, a long time ago. It's really interesting. Including, for example, the coiled molecule inside an actual living cell, as I told you, which you can then postulate to be a von Neumann quantum 3D geometric projection of be represented by a quantum projection operator of, in particular, the sentient, conscious human brain mind, human neuron brain, glial mind, microtubule self with its semantic language capabilities, including those of mathematical analysis as set out in Conway's book on numbers and games. These thus currently include the human race at the top of the food chain of all the existing genomes P on the planet. And so this cosmiogenesis can be categorically formalized in this particular way, and it can be envisaged as a single white whole source, the physical cosmos, with its first order wave front of many black hole and anti-secondary sources. We can therefore identify P with the singularity delta and the bracket formalism, as I've shown, and such that if this particular operation, the source of the wave equals an operator times multiplied by the field, is the source of the field F, then this implies that the inverse operation actually exists. And you can have a Green's function description between the fermion field of the specific bosons in question. So this is what Maurice Jessel, who helped to write the earlier paper, who unfortunately now has died, but he was actually, worked with and was a pupil of de Broglie. And it says in this Gedanken experiment formalization that the perturbation of the field that passes through a surface containing the wave source is identical to the perturbation often by removing that source and substituting it by an appropriate system of secondary sources distributed on the surface S. And so this is the categorical formalization. By the way, it leads to the thing that if you go into a room with a microphone and you have secondary, you connect, the microphone is connected to the secondary sources on the walls of the room, then you can make the whole room quiet. So you can have a room, and I believe this has actually been done, or it's very difficult to do, so that you walk into the room and you speak, and you don't hear anything because the secondary sources on the walls send out waves and will cancel out your voice. Further, it proves that that this is the appropriate Heaviside operator P that von Neumann postulated, and that it's equivalent to a singular Green's function, Schwarz distribution, G, that permits the corresponding description of the same phenomena by means of an integral formula or an infinite summation, and where in 3 dimensions the particular Green's function operator is the one that concerns the Dirac delta function. So this is just a little bit the postulate is that it deals with how brains might work quantum mechanically. In particular, as I said, Schrempp is able to elsewhere mathematically confirm the detail in John Eccles' formulation about the neuron. Somehow we lost the page. So there are oh, so later. So there are 2 more examples of this theory. The theory says that birds, insects, bats, fish have evolved self-governing flight architectures with particular envelopes of flight parameters with which they can always fly autonomously, suited to their particular lifestyle environment. And aircraft have also been built this way before computers became very small. However, outside the envelope of flight dynamics may no longer, envelope of parameters, flight dynamics may no longer possible. And so it's vital to know, in particular for each new aircraft design construction, if the envelope geometry can be actively sustained. And if it can't, then at some point the plane may fall out of the sky. And this particular application can be applied to the evolving biosphere of the planet Earth as well. Now that mankind is taking over Gaia's successful governed autopilot of life on Earth over the history until today. And so I think that this is what the climate people are actually talking about. And this is talking about the cartography of the sentient human nervous neuron, brain, glial, microtubular cell. It says that phase conjugate adaptive resonant projection by dynamic wave control of the brain's sensory apparatus, conceived as a perfectly focused lens when realized by so-called active mirrors in the laboratory. So you can actually confirm this phase conjugate adaptive resonance in the laboratory. Enables living systems to work sentiently using physical sentient sensory hologram encoding and decoding. And so it's able to sense each type of sensory object image outside the body in the environment, wherever they observe and detect the objects, wherever that particular object actually is. And you can test this wherever you see something, seeing some object. If you reach out and touch it, you'll find that that's where it actually is. Or if it's a noise from somewhere, you'll notice that you think that noise is outside. It's not inside the brain at all. It's actually out there. And this enables us to establish the basic means for all our language and communication capabilities by assigning to each physical object of importance that we experientially detect, we give it a name, a unique name. So it predicates that the human brain constitutes a physical mathematical chart of hologram planes appropriate to its several cortical storage organization architecture, where the generalized holograms of its sentient input of sensory experience and thought correspond to the left hemisphere, the semiotic canonical labeling by names the right hemisphere, and the unique signal paths between the two, the corpus callosum, so as to constitute an associate memory and filter bank that is provably the best in nature. For in this hologram phase, frequency, organized associative memory, the adaptive coupling conditions specified below is one of a spectrum of very narrow spectral windows and pages with little or no crosstalk between them, which results in the encoding of data as holograms by means of demultiplexing, reference beam writes, and decoding by corresponding multiplexing, reference beam reads. And this happens autonomously. So when we start to speak, we don't have to do anything. It just happens. It's there. It's an ability that we all have. And it happens in accordance with the orthogonality of the sharp frequency coupling conditions, which are specified in the Hilbert space by the holographic transforms HV. And in relation to the pattern recognition, you can work out this, for instance, in terms of the three-dimensional Heisenberg group. It's a particular identity that is given below. So that's the identity. And third, we can also give actually, I think, a proof that quantum physics and general relativity are compatible. If matter tells, if matter tells three-dimensional plus one space how to curve, then inversely 3 plus 1 space tells matter how to move and evolve. For in diagram 1, if that's the source of the field, then there is an inverse transformation. And as someone I met long ago pointed out, this implies that the partial Lie derivative in connection with the Lie bracket of the above defines the invariant path curves on the surface S of the associated Lie transformation group in terms of the Paphian of the vector field, which define its straight lines. And as is confirmed by the Lie group combinator calculus of field reshaping above, which specifies a Lie algebra invariant phase portraits such that the group Lie bracket is specifies a further group by a set of invariants, which are the geodesic paths on S in relation to the diagram. And they're based on a new computing principle, which was discovered by Fatmi and Rosconi. Again, two people I used to work with. And in this particular paper, which is the new computing principle, it was actually mentored by Abdus Salam. And he clearly was believed that this was the right thing. So the new form of computing is spelt out and well defined by the use of the dynamic of continuous Lie groups. And I haven't put down the categorical diagram because I couldn't get into my computer today because for some reason the scanners are not working. But this is the and this is another paper we wrote. It's a theory of cybernetic and intelligent machines based on Lie commutators. And it took a very long time to get published because amazingly the author of the who was, I think at the time, the Vice Chancellor of Bath University, was knocked off his bicycle and killed. And so it took a very long time to actually get it. So there are three. So this theory defines both quantum computers, a stochastic realization based on Kolmogorov-Gabor theory, and classical machines appropriate to a study of a new class of robots. And all the examples use categorical approach throughout. It's not as probably the exact theories is used today, but then it probably is the same theory, but that one of the founders used in the theory of indistinguishables, Frederick Parker-Rose. He used category theory in his particular book in order to get out the constants, which are one of the outstanding features in the Anpa theory at that time. Now this lets us, these letters, other things I think we can describe warp travel, illustrated by analogy with the use of advanced catagram yachts, which lift out of the water and are able to the Star Trek food machine, which would use laser chemistry to produce the dishes from the basic foodstuffs, and 3D prints to print them out so they look like they should on the plate. So I'll leave it there. And so what do I do now to just?
Okay, Peter. You need to stop sharing. So if you can't see how to do that, then I'll share my screen and then stop that so that we go back to a discussion. But thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Let me do that now. God, I've got to work it out. Wait a minute. There we go. Yes. Yes.
Was I loud enough?
You were fine. I mean, it's got a bit quiet towards the end, but
Yeah.
there's some really fascinating stuff there. So I've got some questions, but any questions? Colin?
Can you hear me? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just a comment. That thing you showed about the centre of the galaxy, that's Sagittarius A star. It isn't actually the centre of the galaxy. It's much too small. The centre of the galaxy is hidden from us. So
Isn't it?
anyway,
Okay, well, I had it
it's not
down.
relevant. Just a comment, that's all. It's not relevant to the rest. Very interesting otherwise.
Yeah. Well, it seemed to go very well with your particular talk.
Good.
In a certain way, didn't it? I thought so at the time. You know.
The whole issue of symmetry is fascinating. I'm very struck by the fact that we started this conference with Peter Rowlands. We've ended with Peter Marser talking about, among other things, Peter Rowlands, and that's quite nice. Okay, any other questions? Wolfgang.
Yes, I have a couple of comments. One, on a practical basis, can you address what happens when people get their colossus cut? You know, in other words, there are operations.
Yeah. Yes.
I think.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah. Lobotomy. Yes. Yeah. Well,
I mean,
I presume
that eliminates a whole.
Yeah, I think it wouldn't surprise me if the two sides, the two hemispheres, work separately, but also the fact that they're actually joined they're all actually fed by a unified system anyway, and also one of the things that happens when people get things damaged in their brains is that the brain starts to find other ways to connect up the brain, so the brain recovers, but really with not perhaps with the usual topology, but by growing by growing connections. Whether it can do it for the corpus callosum, I have no idea. But I think it's very interesting that the model actually says there should be a corpus callosum.
Right, but is it critical to your analysis that it's there and it works, rather than what you're saying is that there's some alternative biological system that would give the same function and do the same?
Well, yes, but it perhaps wouldn't be as efficient.
Have you heard of
One of the things that happens, Wolfgang, is that you go to the doctors and you discover that you've got multiple sclerosis. If you discover that you usually discover this, and what the doctors usually find is that on one side the brain is connected correctly to other things, and on the other side it's all jumbled up, and it's not working properly, and that's the cause of the sclerosis. Also, there was a wonderful lady who I can't remember what her name was now, but she was the wife of the film director Woody Allen. And one thing she did was she used to take in children, and she had a little boy who she picked up, or was given to her, an orphanage in Korea, and he couldn't move any of his limbs at all. They were all tangled up and fixed, and she spent hours every day moving his limbs. herself, and gradually he regained the functioning of his limbs, and finally I think he was able to function quite normally, quite normally, and he went on to some American university, and you know, got his PhD. It was just mind-boggling that she had the foresight and the faith to actually spend many hours a day with this small baby or small boy, and as his faculties grew, she was responsible for ensuring that in the end he was a. On the other hand, it didn't all work out. I think one of the girls, she took him from one of these people who used to give her children to get better. Turned out to be a rather beautiful nubile girl who Woody Allen married when he divorced. He divorced this lady.
Well, the brain is, we're finding the brain is much more plastic than we ever thought it was. It used to thought that it was kind of a static thing, but obviously there are many. Well,
it is rather mind-boggling, and I didn't get time to put this into the thing, but when I in 1984 went to was invited by oh gosh, I've forgotten the man's name now. A member of the European thing to go to the Stanford Research Institute. They had a very interesting theory that of course the human race was still evolving, and they said that there were major paradigm changes. And we were coming up to a new paradigm change because each paradigm change involved an energy deficit, and yes, and an information revolution. So that, for example, when we came down from the trees, okay, we had to come down because you know, that was the only safe way of providing food for the family or tribe. Okay, so that was one of the reasons why we came down. And when we came down, first of all, then we had to do that. We had to start and become upright. Now, upright is we had to, our balance. Now, that's one of the things that every small child and its parents celebrates when it's very tiny. It gets up on its own and it starts to walk, and it takes its very first step, and from then on it knows something about itself, that I'm an autonomous being, and it can be very it starts becoming very willful. Having had 3 boys, I know something about that. That sort of fits. That fits.
Or willfulness.
Well, yes, yes. And sometimes little girls are even more willful.
Yeah.
Because they know how to get around Daddy.
Yeah.
Well, along those lines,
it's pretty instinctive.
Yeah.
So that was it. No, but the second one was that then of course the game started running out. So so man had to settle down, and when he settled down, the old elite of the tribal elders who held all the knowledge, because when they were hunter gatherers, then they weren't the right people. So you had to change the elite that ran the tribe.
Okay.
And I think that is exactly what is happening today. We have all these three factors coming in, and it's chaos out there, as we all know.
Yeah.
And
Peter,
our present set of leaders are not the ones who we're going to need for the next paradigm, whatever.
No, I think this is their last. This is their last hurrah. I want to be. Peter, I just want to be.
Stop.
I just want to be fair to those who are waiting to ask questions.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
I'm going on a bit.
No, it's all right. Don't worry. So, Mike Horner.
Hello, Peter. In the middle, you talked about humans taking over control of the planet. I have two questions there. I'm sure you believe that we're doing this unintentionally. And secondly, do you think that we are humble enough to believe that we're not actually at the moment capable of doing this management of the planet?
I feel that's what we should be, Mike. But unfortunately, I rather fear that we live in an age when certainly the people who are running the place at the moment, and they're not the right people.
Okay, then why don't we connect this to your statement that you found out that there were some people in Stanford who were talking about a paradigm shift. Excuse me, Peter, would you agree? Peter, could you allow the others to speak every now and again? The idea of this paradigm shift, did they give you a hint as to how long it would be? A month, a year, or 500 years, or 5,000 years?
Well, I mean, I think if we get it wrong today,
that's not my question. My question is, did they give you a hint about a date or a period of time?
No.
Okay, that's enough. Thank you.
No. Okay.
Okay. Any more questions?
Well, I wanted to follow up on something that you said. At one point you mentioned, what is it? Neuron brain, glial mind, and microtubule self. I'm especially interested in the glial brain. I'm especially interested in the glial brain because a lot of work has been done on the glial system being much, much more important, and the neuron doctrine being kind of old hat, and no one has fully integrated.
On the model, it would seem as if the glial cells are the basis of some kind of medium for the neural particles, because I mean the first thing that was discovered by the brain was by I think he's called Ramon Ikejap, and he discovered that the neurons work largely independently of one another, and he got the Nobel Prize for it long time ago. I think maybe even before the century, but it was at the beginning of the last century, and I don't know that would the fact that there are glial cells and now people are studying them extensively. I think that's the mind is something to do with the in mathematical terms with the category and type of waves. So, and this can happen autonomously. You can be going along, and suddenly something switches something in your head, and I think it's some sense or something. The mind switches you onto another category of phenomena that you may just be a sound. I mean, when people hear some sound that they never heard before, then they immediately become alerted and change their behavior in, quite significantly according to their particular experience. It's one of the reasons why I'm very worried about all this television that people are watching that is pumped into us by people like Netflix. I mean, everybody in Netflix is either a super being or or in many ways dysfunctional. And I don't think young people should be watching this because particularly people killing one another.
Yeah.
Because they could then go out and think that what they've got in their hand is like somebody on Netflix, and he shoots it at somebody, and these people don't die on Netflix.
That reminds me, we need to get.
If I do it in real life, they won't die. It's not. They do die.
Yeah, we need to get Anpa on Netflix. I think that will fix it. Maybe I don't know.
No, but I mean, I think we're all dedicated to some extent. We feel that we feel in some way that the paradigm is changing, and that we need some new knowledge that will help us, guide us in the future as our brains, and I think will further evolve.
Can I ask you about
one of the thing? Excuse me.
Sorry.
One of the newer discoveries is that the glial system appears to be the part of the brain that does not have any input-output, so that the architecture looks as though the neuron system is the input-output portion of the brain, that there are what they call the tripartite synapses that connect the glial network, which runs on calcium waves, with the neural network, and that the actual calculations, and you mentioned glial mind, would be identified with the glial system. So I'm just wondering if that approach has any effect on your presentation, the calculations that you're presenting. This new interpretation of the importance of the glial system as being a calculating element.
I think it's very important, because I think it's to some extent, if you go to the the mathematical ideas, we're talking about categorizing the categories of mathematics. So it's about the type of phenomena. When this whole system interacts, then as I said in the model, the wave can cause a whole new set of phenomena which have previously been unconscious to become conscious, because the brain sees from its sensors that this is this is now we must look at this new thing than what you had been looking at. And sometimes it doesn't even ask you, it just happens autonomously, doesn't it? You can be going past something, or you can be thinking about something, and then something new comes into your mind for no reason that you necessarily recall. So I think, I mean, the model I'm giving is only at the top. I mean, the other thing that comes up from the mathematics is that you can categorize digital computation in this way. But also the other thing is each of these categories seems to be something to do with some kind of master operator, and this operator is gosh.
Well, I mean,
anyway, I'm sorry. I'm maxing out a little bit. I don't remember things as well as I used to.
You're in good company here.
Yeah. So sorry. I meant to say something, but it just won't.
Okay.
Well, it just turns out that the importance of the glial system is increasing and increasing. In fact, these synapses that connect the neurons and the neural network and the glial network apparently are controlled by a specific cell called the astrocyte glial cells. And it's been shown that you can take astrocyte cells from a higher developed animal and put it into a lower developed animal, and the lower developed animal becomes measurably smarter.
Oh, Jesus.
So, there's a lot going on there, and I'm just want to see how that could these developments could possibly fit into your model. So, but enough is enough.
If this kind of thing can happen in the brain is so plastic. Didn't we hear the other day that Musk was putting some kind of chip into the brain of pigs? So we have to be very careful. The pigs are going to be taking over.
Can I ask a question then? And I think it relates to this. In a sense, the holographic idea that you've very clearly expressed here, it applies to individual brains, but it also applies to relationships. So, Heinz von Förster's got this thing. He talks about the single brain problem, which is the problem of neuroscience effectively, and maybe psychology or some of psychology. You've got a two brain problem, which is perhaps the issue of communication, maybe education. And then you've got a many brain problem, which is the problem of society. Now, is this all holographic? Are these all holograms, and are they related? And where does politics sit in that?
Yeah, I think there are. I mean, I know Peter Rowlands is. All the quantum physicists think there's some kind of holographic connection, don't they? Yeah, no, I think it applies at every levels. So the thing we were talking about last night about the Riemann hypothesis. It sort of says, well, the Riemann hypothesis is there being just one function which embodies the whole of mathematical relationships in some way. And there's clearly some kind of holographic feature in black holes, for example.
So are they commensurable?
I think it extends everywhere to the extent that I think that as Conway discovered in relation to analysis, that each of the actually can be thought, each of the categories in analysis can be thought to be an automorphism, and as Conway proved that the whole thing, all of these automorphisms or categories as you go up are related, so that there actually is a unique birth order automorphism of the whole thing, and
Okay.
that in my model would be this is the connectedness of all things, and that would be that would be the evolution.
You're going to get
All right.
the credit.
Okay, so
you start at you've got the whole system, you start at the bottom, and then you start evolving upwards.
Okay.
So the things the new things build themselves in, but they're connected.
okay. I think it's the political system that I'm interested in, but I can see Lou's got his hand up, and I think, Peter, you want to ask a question as well, Peter Rowlands. So Lou first.
Yeah, there are two concepts that are related. One is fractal and recursive structure, and the other is holographic structure.
Mm-hmm.
And at the social level and many levels of that kind, the fractal and recursive structure is quite obvious and feels holographic because the whole is in the part.
Yeah.
But the fractal and recursive structure is not necessarily like an optical hologram.
Yeah.
And yet, I think in Peter's cosmology, he probably has some comments to make about the interrelationship of those two. Peter, do you?
Me, yes. Well,
No, either Peter, actually.
what I was going to say is that essentially it's the nilpotent mathematics that allows us to do a holographic structure.
Mm.
And since that applies at all scales, therefore you can do a kind of holographic structure at all scales.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah.
That's discussed in Zero to Infinity and other places.
Okay. This is fascinating. Anton, you put your hand up.
Yeah, I would agree with.
Turn him off.
Peter, holographic or not holographic, how do you explain inherited knowledge, i.e. the animal instincts? There are many cases or in his that we see is migratory routes that go over generations, like the monarch butterfly in the US. I think it's 5 generations when they're back in Mexico. Recently in Botswana, the zebra migration has begun again after they took down fencing. And the interesting part was that the zebra who migrated, I think it's over 500 or 600 kilometer distance, that none of them had ever done that route before. You know, that because of, they were all cut off from the route because of the fencing from the farming that was there. So how is that knowledge of these migratory routes within the animal kingdom? How would you explain that?
In the well, I mean, I think this theory doesn't fit to us, but fits to fits to an evolution of all the creatures in life. They're all sentient, and they all have on some scale knowledge of the outside world that. And some very acutely. I'm always struck because occasionally in our apartment, for example, we have these little things which I think are some form of cockroach. You know, little tiny things with lots of legs, but they're amazingly sentient. You know, they you see something moving, and you know that they've seen you because they stopped. They stopped moving because they know we probably won't see them, and we'll leave them alone. But they know they know that we're there. And they're tiny, they're tiny little things, and how they know we're there, or I'm not sure, but they know that if they're seen, they're going to be, they know they're probably going to die. It's just amazing. I find that.
There's a lovely short piano piece by Bela Bartok called "From the Diary of a Fly," and it's amazing to think what the diary of a fly might contain.
Yes. Well, I mean, this is what the Zoom's all about. We're all sort of become fly for the dot of a presentation. We all become flies on the wall of the speaker, and interchange our roles. And I've enjoyed this thing very much, Mark, because it does enable you to get the views of such a disparate audience who I think in the case of Anpa, are all searching to advance the knowledge of mankind and solve some of these problems that are now facing us.
Just in time.
And we just have no idea of what in the future the capabilities, if the human brain-mind self evolves, what it can do. I mean, just going on the television, and I never learned to dance, but I wish that I had. And my wife what was a dancer for a bit, but she couldn't persuade me because of my ineptitude at that kind of thing to take to the floor and learn. But it's just amazing what some of these people can do when they're together, lifting. You know, I mean, Carol often says to me, "You can't lift me up like that, can you?"
Okay, but you're dancing now, Peter, metaphorically. And
well, yes, but I in some ways, I wish I had. There's one thing I could go back. I wish I'd learned to dance.
Look, are there any more questions? Otherwise, I think we should stop because we're going to meet again in just over an hour for our 3-minute sessions. Can I just have a quick, can you stick your hand up? Oh, if you've got your camera on, can you stick your cameras on just for a second? Put your hand up if you want to do something for our jamboree. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. I can't count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Nicola, I can only see a blur. Are you putting your hand up? No. Yes. Right. Sorry. Just keep your hands up. Sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to do something. 8. 9,
Maybe.
10. Okay. 10.
Maybe.
10 in maybe just over an hour. So that gives us a bit longer than 3 minutes. Let's say it's 5 minutes maximum. But if you can keep it shorter, that's better. All right. So I'll definitely turn.
Could I just say something to Lou when you finish?
Yes, of course. I will definitely turn I will definitely mute you after 5 minutes. All right. So you're not going to go longer. If you can do it shorter, that's even better. The idea is just to keep a really rapid pulse.
When do we start this jamboree?
We're going to start at 8 o'clock UK time. So what's that? Is that 2 o'clock your time or 1 o'clock? What's the time there now, Lou?
Well, it's 1:45 now.
1. So it's 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock. Okay.
In Zoom terms, is it the same meeting? You're just leaving this open?
I will. Yeah, let's just leave this open. Leave
Okay.
this.
Good. Great. Okay.
Oh, Lou, I discovered something in this book about by Cack.
Yes,
The
yes.
chapter that's relevant is the last chapter. Is about the connection between kinetic theory, ergodic systems,
Uh-huh.
and of course the continued fraction with all ones is the golden ratio.
Yes, it is. And remarkably, that's a very important number for approximating irrational numbers. These things are not just recreational.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'll look. Did you see anything in there about the Riemann?
Well, it's about number theory.
Yeah.
I don't think he addressed he addressed it, but I think it actually Peter and I and Walter Schwemp in our last in our paper that we wrote jointly for the last Vigier conference actually contains a mention to this ratio, a mention to this particular ratio.
Uh-huh.
And it's a very strange story how I got into that because I way back I was asked by Neville Mott, the Nobel Prize winner, if I would teach a Hungarian who'd just come back from when Hungary was invaded. So you can tell that how long that was. And he believed that he wasn't really onto something. And of course, Neville Mott's to do with disorder. The Schwechter was big into continued fractions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think had known Erdos. But he was a very unlucky guy because when he came back, he thought he'd learned to speak English and somebody had given him a certificate. And so, but his English was absolutely atrocious. And I was going to, I said to him that I'll when he sends me something, we'll try and get his English straightened out. Now, he thought he was good enough to himself to win the most prodigious professorship that came on offer at Cambridge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And of course, because his English was so bad, I don't imagine he even got to the interview. But he was a very unlucky guy. He was a very unlucky guy because just after that, unfortunately, his son committed suicide.
Oh.
And then he just disappeared from the landscape. But he really knew his stuff. He knew that the continued fractions had something to do with quantum physics.
Yeah, I like continued fractions. If you think of infinite continued fractions, then you get all the real numbers that way in a unique way.
Yes.
And,
but if you take the golden ratio is what's amazing about evolution is that all this matter gets more and more different kinds of properties of matter.
Yes.
And this quantum Carnot engine is about that as it goes round its phases, it's changing the properties of matter. And all this fits in with Wilson's renormalization group theory.
Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I shall look at Katz's book. Yeah, I will.
Yeah.
After I've looked at it, maybe we can have another conversation. Be very interesting.
So, although Schwechter was a strange guy, the fact that he attracted Mott's attention.
Hmm.
Gave him, from my point of view, the right kind of provenance.
Oh, there, by the way, there's another book by Katz that I like a lot. It's by Katz and Ulam, Stanislaw Ulam and Mark Katz. They wrote a book, a general book about mathematical structures for the general informed reader, and it's very beautiful. Lots of beautiful things in there.
Okay, yeah. I mean, did you know this book of Conway's? There's a book of Conway's on
Numbers and games, you mean?
No. On apparently on quaternions and octonions.
Oh, yes.
I
Right.
mean, I never knew about that, but
That's a nice book.
I assume that you might have read it.
Well,
'Cause I guess
I guess I can
guess
say
you knew- I guess you
I
knew
I
about-
have it, and I've read it in the way I read most books in my library, which is that I open them up and read bits and pieces from time to time, and over a period of years, I might actually have read the whole book.
We never tell our students this, do we? They always think they have to start at the way towards the end.
Yes.
Yeah.
But did you know Conway?
Oh, yes.
You would have known him.
Yeah. He taught me the most important thing. He taught me how to make a knot appear on a rope without letting go of the
Oh, I
ends.
see. Okay.
You see.
He came to Anpa. He came
Oh,
to
also, he came to Anpa once and gave us a beautiful talk about the free will theorem.
Yeah.
Maybe you were there.
Yeah. Well, yes. Because I got him to come to that meeting in Liège.
Mhm.
I wrote to him and said that we were very interested in his surreal number theory, because there were other people in his group then who'd gone much more deeply into the analysis by surreal numbers. A man called Ehrlich and things like that. But he always seemed to me, when I met him, to be playing his cards very close to his chest.
What do you mean by that? On the one hand, he was
I don't know. It doesn't actually fit now with what I've learned about him. He was usually very open with his students, wasn't he?
I see him as a combination of very creative mathematician and magician. I mean, he really was a performer. He could do things and mystify you. And also, he prepared a lot of mathematical nuggets in a way that he could teach them to you as though he were teaching you a magic trick.
Yeah. So, well, in that way, I think of him in this category of people like Feynman.
Mhm.
And of the people here, I think you probably become closest to people in that particular category.
I'm sure you all need a break.
Mark.
So
No. Some of us already had lunch.
yeah,
And,
but I need a break.
And some of us are about to go to lunch. Yeah.
Yeah, you go to lunch and come back in an
Peter
hour.
Rowlands, can you stay on? I'd like to talk to you and Peter Marsden.